Hello everyone, welcome to module 2 about data preprocessing. So like module 1, we'll go through a number of videos in order to explain the concepts that we discuss in class. So very first thing, we need two libraries, Pandas and Numpy. So Pandas, you already know that from module 1. I will do a brief introduction to Numpy and kind of exemplify what are the key differences, right? And we'll explore the required functionality as we go through this module and the subsequent modules. I will also provide a link to Numpy so that in case you want to explore it further, right? So Pandas, as we know from the previous class, it allows us to work with a data frame. So which means data is structured in a tabular form. It has rows and columns, which means different attributes, and the transaction data is stored with respect to each of those attributes. And the other thing, data frames allows you to work with similar or multiple data types. So for example, in a housing data frame, we have a number of bedrooms, which is a number value or integer value. We have price, which is a floating point number or a value with a decimal place, right? Then we had a attribute which called remodel, which has a string value like none, old, and new. So we can store different data types in one data frame. So which gives you kind of flexibility to manipulate the data frame and apply different functions such as describe, sum, average, median, and so on. The other hand, Numpy is a array. So array, if you want to kind of really think about it in a very simplistic manner, so let's say one particular column is a Numpy array. So which means it is storing data about a specific attribute, right? And so which means it can only deal with one data type. What it is very strong when it comes to numerical data analysis, right? So we'll kind of go through that briefly in this particular module. So in order to kind of exemplify how it looks, so we'll start by incorporating or importing the Pandas and Numpy, two libraries. So once you import it, let's look into Numpy example first. So I'm going to just do a markdown here. So let's create a Numpy array. So I'm going to call a NP array and NP dot array, and let's store some values. So let's say we have some numbers in a sequence, 4, 5, 6, and so on, and we can print the array. So if I run this particular piece of code, NP array, not array, NPARR. So we have these 6 values stored in this Numpy array, and we can access a specific data point in the array, like in Pandas or in a data frame, we use iLock and lock function, right, to access a particular location. So let's say print NP array data point number 2. So in this case, we are getting a value 3. Remember, the indexing starts from 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Index number 3, which is actually 2, contains this particular value, right? Okay. So similarly, you can get the type. So let's say print np underscore array dot type, d type, data type. So in this particular case, okay, so what did we do? Sorry, not AP, NP array, right? So we have data type integer, right? So let's say if I change these values, let's say 1.56, 2.67, 3.897, something like that, 4.56, 5.98, 6.45. Let's run this piece of code again, right? So we have data point at location 3 is 3.897, and it's a floating point number, right? So which is numbers with the decimal places. Similarly, you can store a string value, true false values, and you can kind of look into what data type you have. And you can perform all the basic operations that you do with operators, right? So when I say with an operator, so let's say you have this Numpy array, and let's say we want to add 10 into all the values in this particular array. So if you execute this, 1.56 plus 10 will give you 11.56, right? So 10 being added to all the values in this array, right? So we can perform all the arithmetic operations as we do with simple variables. So to just finish it off, let's say you want to manipulate a particular value, for example, 3.897. So in this row number 2, we end up adding 10 to every single value. What we can do is, now we want to only manipulate the index 2 or the value number 3, so ARR, second location, so NP array at second location. Let's say I want to multiply this by 10. So let's execute this. So we can see this value number 3 is worth 38.97, right? So 3.897 plus 10, which is 13.897, and now that's multiplied by 10, right? So as I said, I will provide the link, so please explore this in your own time, but I will highlight the functionality required to complete different modules that we'll be covering in this particular course. So we have the Numpy array in place. Let's kind of quickly look into example on how a Pandas data frame looks like, right? So I'm going to get the code that we used in last class. So let me just copy and paste that. So in this particular case, from our last class, we have example data frame where we have a attribute named cafe, where we have different cafes here, and second attribute rating, so ratings being provided, right? So if we print this data frame, so let's just do example underscore df. So we have two attributes related to this particular data frame with the cafe name and the ratings. On the other hand, with Numpy array, it is just one dimensional, that you can call, right? Okay, so it's just storing the values associated with one data type. Well, here we have different data types: the objects, cafe, and ratings. So you may say, okay, hang on, how do we know what data type we have? So what you can do is, let's say print example data frame, example underscore df dot d types, data types. So let's execute that. So we have cafe data type, which was very first attribute here as object or as a string, and ratings as integer value, right? So similarly, we may have ratings stored, let's say in a decimal place, 5.0, 4.2, 4.5, 2.9. So that's now rating is as a floating point number, right? Okay, so similarly, you may have a Boolean, which is true, false, strings, which is an object, and so on, right? So again, we'll kind of explore these as we go through subsequent videos and the other chapters. So let me show you one more thing, so which is using some of the arithmetic operations as we use with data frame. So if you remember from the previous modules, like the example data frame, example underscore df, and we know that we have ratings as a numeric value, and we can use things like such as sum. So 19.9, right? And yeah, one more thing, we can make it a bit more fancy. So let's say I have a variable rating sum, which I stored this value instead of printing it. Now I can print sum of ratings space equals to space, comma, rating underscore sum. So looks kind of more neat, right? We know what we are printing now. We can use kind of print to concatenate a string, a number of two strings, and so on, right? So I would highly recommend, could you please start practicing in this way to print out the information so that it is more meaningful, right? Similarly, we can use, let's say, max. So I can say this is max rating. we have maximum rating 5.0, right? So please look into the previous module regarding standard deviation, variance, and so on, right? So we cover those functions there. Same thing we can do with Numpy array as well. So let's say I have a variable which is s or sum, and in this case we have our Numpy array np underscore arr, and I can apply sum, and then we can do print sum equals to x, right? So let's execute this. So in this case, sum is 210.1899 and so on. So okay, hang on, I want to round it. So round to 2 decimal places. So 210.19 should be the kind of rounded value. Similarly, you can use standard deviation, variance, and so on, right? So up to this point, we're done with kind of a brief explanation of Numpy and Pandas, right? So in next video, we will import the given data set, and we'll start kind of doing some data pre-processing. Okay, so we'll see you all in next video. Thank you.